Now you can hear me. Just give me a confirmation, then I will start. Okay, fine. So I will start with the last class. So what we discussed about the Maxwell equation. In the case of Maxwell equation, if there is an electric field defined in vacuum, let's say the electric field is E, then the del square E is written as mu naught epsilon naught del square E del T square. And this mu naught epsilon naught is found to be 1 upon c square, which is also the speed of light. So Maxwell equation is in fact coming out to be del square E 1 upon c square del square E del T square. So from here we see that velocity of light or speed of light can be written as mu naught epsilon naught square root 1 upon mu naught epsilon naught square root. Probably in one of the lines I wrote mu naught epsilon naught as c square, so there was a mistake as far as the dimension is concerned. So please note here c has dimension L by time, length by time, so time gets cancelled. Now on both sides you have 1 upon length square as the dimension. Now this is all. So please rectify in the previous class that there was a mistake in the position of c square. In any case, c is 1 upon mu naught epsilon naught. Mu naught is the permeability of free space, epsilon naught is the permittivity of free space, and these are the property of the medium. So once you consider the medium to be vacuum, irrespective of whether light is propagating in any direction, left to right, right to left, top to bottom, bottom to top, to the north, to the south, so any direction you consider, since the property of the medium is not going to change, so the velocity of light is also going to be constant. So this is according to the Maxwell equation. But if we now employ classical velocity addition formula, then you will see that depending on in which direction light is traveling. So if light is traveling in the same direction as the frame of reference from where the measurement of the speed of light is taken, then in one case you will find the speed of light to be c minus v, and in another case, if the light is traveling in the opposite direction, you may find the speed of light to be c plus v. It is the same medium. You may consider that the frame of reference S prime is moving with a constant velocity v in vacuum only. So even in vacuum, from S prime if you make a measurement, the speed of light may vary from c minus v to c plus v. Now here is the problem, that if velocity of light is going to be constant for a given medium or for vacuum in the case of Maxwell equation, then the Maxwell equation cannot be correct in the other frame. So this was the inconsistency of the Newtonian mechanics as far as validation of the Maxwell equation is concerned. Now, since Newtonian mechanics, as we discussed, was very much dominant at that time, so nobody could think that there is something wrong with the classical mechanics or Newtonian mechanics. So there were various propositions, and one proposition is that the Maxwell equation will be correct only in a particular frame of reference. So that particular frame of reference has to be a special frame of reference. So only in that particular frame of reference, Maxwell equation will be valid. Means only in that particular frame of reference, the speed of light will be c. In other frames, the speed of light will be different from c, can be different from c. So then there has to be a special frame. Now that what is that special frame of reference? spatial frame of reference. Now this spatial frame of reference is a medium, is constituted by a medium called ether, E-T-H-E-R, ether. So it is a hypothetical medium. Now we know that it is hypothetical, but at that time, when Maxwell's equation was proposed in around 1860s, so during 1860 to 1880, when these experiments were going on, various type of proposals were coming. So at that time, it was a proposal that maybe there is a medium called ether, and light travels with the speed of c as part of Maxwell equation only in ether medium. So in other medium, Maxwell equation will not be valid. So in order that this proposition is correct, there has to be a spatial medium, and it is imagined that some material is there, some transparent material is there, made up of ether, and in that medium made up of ether, light travels with 3 into 10 power 8 meter per second in that particular medium. So then if the existence of ether is correct, is true, then it has to be validated by experiment. In physics, there can be any hypothesis, but that hypothesis has to be validated by experiment. Only then it will be considered as a principle of physics or law of physics. So if we need to consider that there is a spatial frame of reference made of ether, then it need to be verified by experiments. And in 1880, Michelson and Morley, it was started by Michelson, later it was assisted by Morley. They performed an experiment in which they tried to establish, they try to validate the proposal that there is a spatial medium, there is a spatial frame of reference made of ether in which light travels with the velocity c, and in which medium only the Maxwell's equations will be valid. So what they did, they considered that Earth is a moving frame. So let's say this is our Earth, and Earth is moving, let us assume with a velocity v, and our Earth is moving in the medium ether. So if you have to consider the speed of light as c, then you have to make measurement with respect to the ether frame. So with respect to the ether frame, light will be traveling with the speed c. In the other medium, light will be traveling with a different speed. So they considered that Earth is moving with a constant velocity. Now we know that Earth is having an orbital motion around the sun, and also it is having a rotational motion about its own axis. But this rotational motion, the spin about its own axis, is so slow. It is slow in the sense that it covers one complete angle, that is 360-degree angle, in 24 hours of time. So if you find out the angular velocity, you will find that the angular velocity can be very small, is very small. So that way the angular velocity of the Earth is neglected, and neglecting the angular velocity or rotational speed of Earth, it is only having a linear velocity most of the time. So there is a sun somewhere here, and the Earth is moving most of the time, let's say, with a linear velocity. So that way we consider Earth to be an inertial frame. So the experiment was performed, the experimental setup was positioned on Earth. Now what kind of experimental setup? An experiment was performed with a beam of light. So here is a beam of light which is traveling from left to right, and the experimental setup is attached on the Earth, and the beam of light is incident on a beam splitter BS. This BS or beam splitter is in fact a half silvered mirror. Half silvered mirror. So what is this half silvered mirror does actually? It transmits 50% of the light and it reflects 50% of the light. So 50% of the light will get reflected and 50% of the light will get transmitted. Now the reflected light is directed towards a mirror M1. Light is incident on M1, and due to the property of the mirror M1, the light will be again reflected backwards. Then after getting incident on the beam splitter, again 50% of that light, so that is 25% of the original light will get reflected, rest 25% will get transmitted. So on the lower side of the beam splitter, you have a beam coming. Then if you consider the originally transmitted beam that goes towards another mirror, M2, and from here also the beam gets reflected. After reflection, it is incident on the half silvered mirror again. 50% of the light will get transmitted, 50% will get reflected. So you have one reflected beam coming from M2, one reflected beam coming from M1. Now if you have a detector here, this detector will record the superposition of two light beams, one coming from M1, one coming from M2. You know that light is an electromagnetic wave. So if I write down the electric field, let's say one wave is like this, and if these two distance, the distance from BS to M1 and BS to M2, if these two distances are equal, let's say BS M1 equal to BS M2, let's say equal to L. So if distances are made equal, then the two waves will be intersecting with equal phase. Means if there is a amplitude maximum of one wave, that amplitude maximum will be meeting with another amplitude maximum of the other wave. So the two waves will be meeting with a zero phase difference. And when there is a zero phase difference, there will be a maximum intensity. It is also called the interference maximum. So the detector here will give you the maximum signal. But if the two waves are not meeting with zero phase difference, let us say something like this. Here is one wave and here is the other wave. So the crest of one is coinciding with the trough of other. That is, the amplitude maximum in the positive direction is coinciding with amplitude maximum in the negative direction. When this happens, you will get a intensity minimum. That is called the destructive interference of the due to the superposition of the two waves, and you will get a minimum signal here. So depending on whether the two waves are meeting with a zero phase difference or not other than zero phase difference, the signal of the detector will be different. So we can find out the difference between the phase difference between the two waves by looking at the detector signal here. But remember, this particular frame is attached to the Earth, and the Earth we are considering to be moving with a constant velocity v. But whether we will be getting a maximum signal or a minimum signal or in between maximum or minimum, that will depend what is the time light is taking to reach here. Let's say what is the time taken by the light going from BS to M1 and then coming back to BS, then BS to M2 and coming back to BS. So these are two different paths. Path 1, let me write down path 1. By the way, you have seen that I'm using a green board instead of the whiteboard because it will give me a bigger area, but you have to let me know whether this is better or not. And if there is some issue with this one, then I will go back to the whiteboard. I will stick to the green board only if there is some clear advantage. Otherwise, I will go back to the whiteboard. In any case, look at the Michelson-Morley experiment setup. There is this path 1. So in the case of path 1, light which is starting from BS, then it goes to M1. From M1, it goes back to BS. So what is the time taken by light to complete this path? And then path 2. So in the case of path 2, let us say light starts from BS, it goes to M2, the other mirror, and from M2 comes back to again BS. So these two times, time taken along the two paths, if the time taken is same, then there will not be any phase difference, because the time taken by light to travel a certain distance, if the time taken is different, then it will lead to a phase difference. And if there is no time difference, there will not be any phase difference. So we need to see whether the time taken along path 1 and path 2 are different or not. And then we'll also realize how this experiment can establish the presence or absence of the ether medium. So we'll come to that point a bit later, but now let us calculate what is the time taken along path 1. So time taken path 1. So you are, since the time taken is to be measured from an ether frame, we have to make the measurement from the ether frame. Why? Because we know, as per our assumption, the light will travel with the velocity c only in the ether medium. So we have to make the measurement with reference to the ether frame. So when we try to make the measurement, we look at how light is traveling from the frame of reference ether. Now let us assume that the setup is on the frame S prime, which is moving with the velocity v, but S is the ether frame. S is the ether frame. We are observing from the ether frame in order to find out what is the time taken along path 1. So as the light will start from the beam splitter, let us say it will take a certain amount of time. Let me call it T1. It will take a certain amount of time T1 to reach the position of the mirror M1. This is supposed to be the position of M1, but you see M1 is attached to the earth and the earth is moving with a velocity v. So by the time light reaches the mirror has changed its position to this particular location, and these two are separated by the distance v into T1. So from the frame of reference of S, light will be traveling like this. So let's say it has gone from B to M1, and after reflection, similarly, it will be traveling like this, and by the time it reaches the beam splitter also has moved to this location. So this is as per the frame of reference of ether. Now if you join these 2 points, also drop a line here. If I call it, let's say O prime is the point where the perpendicular is intersecting the line B prime. Now you see the distance from B to M1 is the distance as observed from the ether frame that light travels in time t1. So the distance BM1 is equal to CT1. According to the Pythagoras theorem, CT1 square is equal to, if I call, we have already assumed this distance to be L. So L square plus this distance is the distance I have already defined, VT1 square. So that gives me T1 square, C square minus B square equal to L square. So it means T1 equal to L by C minus V square. Of course, I will have to take a square root. I have to take a square root, then it is L by square root C square minus V square. This is the time taken from B to M1, but when you consider the distance taken from M1 to B, these two distances are equal. So total time will be total time along path 1 is equal to twice T1 equal to twice L. I can take C common. So C comes out square root 1 minus V square by C square. Twice L upon C square root 1 minus V square by C square. So this is the total time taken along path 1 as per the observer in the frame S. This is the frame at rest. Now what about the total time along path 2? So I'll obtain the expression along path 2 without taking help of relative speed or relative velocity. So I'll do it in a more straightforward manner. So in order to find out the total time taken along path 2, we have to consider the light which is starting from the beam splitter, let's say from the location B, and then it is starting to travel towards the mirror. Let us consider that it has reached the mirror M2 after time T2. So T2 is the time taken by light to go from here to here. It is the time T2. So this distance as part of frame S is equal to CT2, and this has to be equal to the length and the additional length that the mirror will travel, which is V into T2. So L plus VT2. The meaning is the distance between B and M2 had the experimental setup at rest, then distance between B and M2 would have been L. Now this mirror has moved a further distance of V into T2 by the time light reaches the mirror M2. So right hand side will be L plus V into T2. This gives me T2 equal to L divided by C minus V. Next, light after getting incident on the mirror M2 starts traveling to the left, and let's say after time T3, it has reached the mirror position, the beam, half silvered mirror, which is at, let's say, B prime. So the distance, the time taken is T3, so the distance traveled is C33, and this distance will be the distance when it just started with, that is L plus VT2 minus L plus VT2 minus the distance that the beam splitter will travel during the total amount of time, that is VT2 plus T3. So minus VT2 plus T3. VT2 gets cancelled. This gives me L minus VT3. So eventually T3 will be equal to L divided by C plus V. So total time along path 2 is T2 plus T3. When you add LC minus V plus LC plus V, this gives you C square minus V square 2C into L. After I take C square common in the denominator, this will give me 2L by C 1 minus V square upon C square. So this is my expression 2. And if you compare with expression 1, 2L by C is present in both the expressions, but in one denominator you have square root of 1 upon V square by C square, whereas in the other expression you have 1 minus V square by C square. So there is a square root appearing along path 1. So if V is non-zero, then 1 and 2 will be giving different time interval. But if V is 0, if the frame S prime is at rest with respect to the ether frame, then the two time intervals are same, but otherwise there will be a time interval. And this time interval is appearing with the assumption that light travels with the velocity c in the frame S, and S is the ether frame. So if ether frame exists, then one can make the measurement from the ether frame and find out the total time taken along path 1 and path 2 in the Michelson setup, and you can get an expression where you will see that one path, the time taken along path 1 and time taken along path 2 are different. And how different it will be, let us consider that what is the difference? Time interval difference. Time interval difference, if I call it delta t, is coming out to be 2L by C 1 upon square root V square minus C square minus 2L by C 1 minus V square upon C square. So this difference, whatever, depends on whether V is non-zero. If V is non-zero, then this delta t will be different, but the value of delta t is a function of the velocity of the frame of reference. So you are going to get different value of delta t if V is different. And this delta t is nothing but, if we look at the Michelson setup again, if we look at the Michelson setup, eventually there will be these two beams which will be superimposing and which will be giving an interference pattern. Whether you will be getting interference maximum or something in between, what is the value of delta t? If delta t is 0, then the two waves will be meeting with equal phase and there will be a maximum signal. But if delta t is other than 0, then you will get a different signal. Now let's consider that velocity of the speed, orbital speed of Earth as it is rotating. Let's say this is Earth. As it is rotating at different time of the year, actually, the speed of Earth is different. So let's say at one point of the year, Earth is here. At another point of the year, Earth is here. And these two will have two different values of the velocity. And they are different. So Michelson and Morley performed their experiment and find out what is the signal. They found what is the signal at different time of the year. But to their surprise, they have found that there is no change. The signal remains same, irrespective of what is the instantaneous orbital speed of the Earth. So for simplicity, we can consider it is just a frame of reference S prime moving with a certain speed. So if the speed changes, then that is not leading to a change in the signal. So if they are not leading to a change in the signal, then the assumption that light travels with the velocity c only in the ether medium, there is some issue with that assumption. So this was again a huge setback to the proposal that there is a medium called ether and light travels with c only in ether. So that proposal again need to be revisited. But as we discussed that these were taking place in 1880 and between 1880 and 1900, actually the Newtonian mechanics was so dominant that people were not convinced immediately that there could be something wrong here. There could be something wrong in Newtonian mechanics. There could be something wrong in the Galilean transformation. So again, there was another proposal to justify why Michelson and Morley experiment could not register any change in the signal. So one such hypothesis, one such proposal is called ether drag theory. So you can explain the result of the Michelson and Morley experiment if you assume that light is traveling with the speed c even in the Earth's frame. So if you perform the experiment, if you make this measurement from Earth's frame and if you imagine that light is still traveling with the velocity c, since the two mirrors are situated at equal distance from the beam splitter, so you will see that they will meet with zero phase difference or a constant phase difference, so the signal is not going to change. So if you imagine that in the Earth's frame also, the speed of light is still c, then the result of the Michelson and Morley experiment can be validated or can be explained. So in order to explain, it was assumed that if you consider the Earth which is moving with a velocity v, and it is moving with respect to the ether frame, but due to the gravitational pull of the Earth, some part of the ether is dragged by Earth. So in fact, when this experiment was performed in some region, in this region is also actually occupied by ether, and the ether medium was dragged by Earth with the same velocity v. So just like our atmosphere is attached to the Earth, it was assumed that the ether medium is somehow dragged by the Earth and it is forcing the ether medium to get attached to the Earth and move with the same velocity. So when we were performing the experiment on Earth, because of the ether which is stick onto it, the velocity of light is still remains c. But if you imagine that there is some amount of ether which got stuck to the surrounding of the Earth but then there is ether all over. Now suppose some light coming from a star. Now this light, when it comes through the ether medium, it is traveling with the velocity c. But as soon as it enters the medium of Earth, now as per ether drag theory, the light should travel with the speed c even with respect to the Earth's frame, because ether is now attached to Earth. So to make that happen, you will see that there should be a bend. Light should get bent. This is in addition to the bending due to refraction. Okay, so you can forget about the refraction if you consider the light is incident normally, or we are considering an angle, an additional bend in the light in addition to the refraction. So do not get confused with refraction of light. Here we are ignoring refraction of light, or we are already including the refraction of light. Now this is something additional. It is due to the fact that it is due to the assumption that light travels with the velocity c in ether. Here ether is at rest, but here ether is moving with a velocity v. So as a result, light has to get bent. Now if light has to get bent, there are many other stellar phenomenon which should be observed. We should be see, because of the bending of light, some other phenomenon we should observe, but experimentally those are not observed. So that way, ether drag theory cannot be correct. Now, only explanation was provided by Einstein, who said that the speed of light will not vary. Speed of light in vacuum will not vary from one frame to the one inertial frame to another inertial frame. So irrespective of where you make the measurement, irrespective of which inertial frame you consider, speed of light will be always equal to c. So that actually gave rise to his postulates of the special theory of relativity. So now I'll write down postulates of special theory of relativity. So in fact, special theory of relativity only has two postulates. The first postulate you are already familiar with. We can state the first postulate as any frame of reference moving with a uniform velocity with respect to an inertial frame is also an inertial frame. Any frame of reference moving with constant velocity with respect to an inertial frame is also an inertial frame. And what is an inertial frame? This we already defined, but I am going to define it again. It is a frame of reference where laws of physics hold or are valid in their present form. In their present form. So first of all, we need to understand that when we define an inertial frame, all laws of physics need to be valid in their usual form. sorry, not present form, in their usual form. In their usual form. Usual means without any correction factor, no modification. So as wherever the original expression or usual expression of the laws of physics are valid, then that particular frame of reference will be an inertial frame, and any frame of reference moving with a constant velocity with respect to an inertial frame is also an inertial frame. This is the first postulate. Then second postulate, which is coming as the outcome of the Michelson and Morley experiment, is that speed of light in vacuum is c in all directions and in all inertial frames. So these are the two postulates of the special theory of relativity. So although these are only two postulates, their significance are quite huge. So the outcome is quite huge, and there will be several outcomes that we are going to discuss in this particular course. So one aspect that we are going to discuss is the time dilation. So you can see the most important postulate of special theory of relativity is that the speed of light, when you measure the speed of light from an inertial frame in vacuum, you should always get 3 into 10 power 8 meter per second. Doesn't matter whether your frame of reference is moving or your frame of reference is rest, provided it is an inertial frame. So using that particular postulate, we are going to now make some further observation. So for our first observation, what we consider that there is a frame S prime which is moving with a constant velocity v. And the frame S prime is moving with a constant velocity v with respect to another inertial frame S. So S is the rest frame. S prime moving with v with respect to S. And you can imagine that this S prime is nothing but maybe an observer sitting on a train. Now let me consider that there are two events taking place in the frame S prime. And what are the events? The event is that a light emits from the floor. It travels towards the roof, and on the roof there is a mirror fixed. It gets reflected from the roof and it comes back. So the observer S prime measures the time interval between the emission of light from the floor of the train and the reception of the light after it is getting reflected from the mirror. So let me call it delta t prime, time interval. It is the time interval between two events. And what are the two events? The two events emission of light from a point and its receive and its arrival after reflection emission and arrival are at the same location. Emission and arrival are at the same location. So this is important. Location part need to be specified. So maybe you can just imagine that you have a laser pointer. So you have seen this small diode laser. Maybe the observer was holding a small diode laser and he was switching on that small diode laser by keeping it upwards at the floor. So the clock starts when he switches on the laser, then the light goes upward, gets reflected vertically downward, and then there is a detector, and that detector receives the light. So that is delta T1 prime. Delta T1 prime is the time interval as measured by the observer in S1 prime, as measured by the observer in S prime frame. Now, if we consider the postulate of the second postulate of the special theory of relativity, it doesn't matter whether the observer in S prime or S, the light need to travel with a speed equal to c. So even in S prime frame, it will travel with the speed c. So delta T prime has to be equal to, let's say this distance is equal to h. So h divided by c is the time taken by light to go from the floor to the roof, and then from roof to the floor will be another h by c. So it will be 2h by c. So this is as per the observer in S prime frame. What about the observer in S frame? For the S frame, or for the observer who is in the S frame. Now you see, according to the observer, the train is moving with a velocity v. So the clock starts when the laser beam is emitted, and let's say it takes time equal to T2 divided by 2. Let me consider that the time taken to reach the floor as per the observer S is T2 by 2. But by the time light reaches the floor has moved, the train has moved a distance equal to Vt2. So after that, light will get reflected and then it will be reaching the floor of the train again, but this distance will be, if I consider this as Vt2 by 2, So the total time taken is from here to here, total time taken is V to T2. So this distance, the total distance is VT2. So half of this is VT2 by 2. Remember, this distance is H. So now from the frame S, this distance will be C into T2 by 2. So C into T2 by 2 whole square must be equal to H square plus VT2 by 2 whole square, which gives me T2 square by 4 C square minus V square equal to H square. Making it T2 square equal to 4H square C square minus V square. If I take the square root, T2 is coming out to be 2H. If I take C square common, after taking square root, if I take C square common, so I will get C square root 1 minus V square by C square. Now this T2 is nothing but the total time of the event as measured from S, frame S. So I can call this as the time interval delta T. So if a particular, that is coming out to be, in this particular case, 2H by C, 1 minus V square by C square. And if I'm making from the S prime frame, this is 2H by C. Remember, the event is nothing but the switching on of a laser which is starting from the floor, the switching on and the arrival. The time interval between the switching on of a light pulse and the arrival of the light pulse. So considering that in the S prime frame it is 2H by C, but in the S frame the same interval is found to be 2H by C into 1 upon square root 1 minus V square by C square. So the most important point here is that the two time intervals are not same. If you are making the measurement from S frame and S prime frame, you are not going to get the same time interval. So whatever we considered as the universality of the frame of reference, universality of the time, that is not going to be valid under relativistic mechanics. Please note that when we are considering time dilation, we are considering that the speed of light is c in vacuum in any inertial frame. So we are no longer in the classical domain, we are already in the relativistic mechanics domain. So our conventional wisdom of classical mechanics is not going to apply here. So I'll stop here. Just 2-3 minutes I can spend. If you have any question, of course, you have to tell me if you find that this green board is particularly advantageous. Otherwise, I will go back to the whiteboard. Okay, so it seems right. Okay. Please continue with the green board. Green board is the best. But some people are saying that, you know, the resolution, the size of the letter is smaller here. Because of that, they were finding it difficult. But yes, I can, if you think that this is more advantageous, I can continue, but you see that arrangement is a little bit different. Of course, I can try if I use my laptop directly with this one, whether how that will look like. Okay, but somehow I think previous division was telling that this green board is not okay. I need to go back to the whiteboard. But your division is somehow liking it. The green board gives the real feel. It would be little more helpful if the camera could be a bit more closer. See what I'm trying to do. There are two boards. If there are two boards, then I can derive it here also, here also. The problem in my office, the whiteboard is in my office. The problem with the whiteboard is that if I have to make long derivation, then I have to wipe it out again, write again, wipe it out. So I have to write. So here, the only advantage I can take of is that I can make use of both. But in that case, both should be in the field of view. Whiteboard was better as in mobile. Yes, I understand. Those who are using mobile phone probably will like the whiteboard, but those probably using laptop, um, they are liking the green board. There is no issue. The board is better. Please continue with this board. Green board is okay. Please keep camera closer. Actually, camera, we can zoom the camera. It is possible to zoom, but then the region will be very small. I need to confine. Then I have to again wrap it again and again. That is the only issue. But I'll see if I can use my laptop camera directly here. How will it look like? But I guess, will not the revolution around the sun by Earth has acceleration? Velocity is constantly changing. Yes. It's not, I mean, see, like the speed of the Earth, orbital speed of the Earth, if you consider this is sun, the Earth is moving like this. So what we are saying is that if you are making a measurement here, if you are making a measurement here, to a large extent, you are considering that the speed of light to be constant. It is not constant in the absolute sense, but as far as the observable effect is concerned, for the observable effect, it can be considered to be constant. Okay, so sir, BS is also on Earth, so it also travels extra in path to calculation. Yes, yes, BS, yes, that I have taken care of. How can we be sure that in path 2 the mirror moved only in the straight line? That is the definition. The experimental setup is attached to Earth and Earth is moving with a constant velocity. There is no change in direction. It is going in a constant velocity. That is the assumption. Why mostly have performed this experiment? What is it? Why most Michelson Morley? Why Morley has performed this experiment as he cannot be able to find V of Earth with respect to suppose ether medium. I think by the time they were knowing that Earth is having an orbital velocity and at different time of the year, the velocity of Earth is different, orbital speed of the Earth is different. They were knowing that. That is why they wanted to make use of that fact to see if there is going to be any variation in the signal. So anyway, I think I'll have to stop at this point. So it seems maybe I'll try tomorrow also and take feedback again from the other batch. And then because it seems you people are liking the green board, so tomorrow also probably I will continue with the green board. Only then I will take a decision. Okay, so we'll stop here.